DXKO Cagayan de Oro, DXDX General Santos, DYKC Cebu, DZKI-IRIGA, DXKD Dipolo, DXKS Surigao, DXKP Pagadian, DXKT Davao, at DZRL Bata RPN Provincial Stations.
RPN Radio Philippines Network, Radyo Ronda, DZKI-IRIGA, member kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
CNN Philippines Hour sa RPN-DZKI-IRIGA, alas 6 hasta alas 7 ng manggi, Lunes hanggang Biyernes. CNN Philippines Hour.
The assessment and they fall objectively under a high-risk classification, then that will warrant escalation to alert level 3.
The Trade Department is looking at putting a cap on purchases amid low supply of some paracetamol brands. The Health Department and drug companies urge the public to try generic brands while they ship in more supply. Paige Javier has the details.
Long lines and out-of-stock signs greet customers at some drugstores in Metro Manila. Many of them are buying medicines for flu-like symptoms, but most leave empty-handed, trying their luck elsewhere.
Mahaba kanina, pabalik-balik ako, pakatlong balik ko naman. Paracetamol.
Lahat na po ng tindahan dito ng mga bilihan ng gamot, naghahanap na po kang Biogesic. Wala po talaga ubusan
The Trade Department suggests that drugstores limit the number of medicines per purchase to avoid panic buying. Trade Secretary some brands of paracetamol due to delivery cutoff. But Lopez assures there's enough supply, especially for generics. The Health Department called on Filipinos to take alternative brands for now. They're also coordinating with drugstores to speed up the replenishment of supplies. The Pharmaceutical and Healthcare Association of the Philippines, or PHAP, says it did not expect a huge increase in demand of these medicines.
What we're observing today is an out-of-stock situation on certain areas with specific branches of drugstores and of specific brands. I think in general, Filipinos prefer or are used to certain brands of medicines that they've been buying.
PHAP member companies are working on airlifting supplies from other countries. The group also says it will not jack up prices. Generica Drugstore CEO Josette Abarca says demand often increases during cold weather and when COVID cases go up. CEO Josette Abarca says demand often increases during cold weather and when COVID cases go up.
We have adequate stock of these generic equivalents. Gone through that process of registration and review of our regulatory body, then it should be as effective as the innovator or branded counterpart.
A registered pharmacist backs the call to take generic paracetamol as an alternative.
Siguro po itry nyo munang gamitin yung generic na gamot. Mahirap naman po sa panahon ngayon dahil nga nagkakaubusan ng mga kilalang brands ng paracetamol. Mahirap naman po na wala nang may inom na gamot yung mga pasyente natin. Mas maganda na yung may inom sila kesa sa wala.
Paige Javier, CNN Philippines.
At home, COVID-19 antigen test kits may soon be approved in the country as the demand for testing increases. The Health Secretary says his agency asked the Food and Drug Administration to allow approved antigen tests to be used at home. The Health Department earlier said antigen tests are better used to check symptomatic patients for infection.
The demand is really great for this, admittedly. But we really have to educate our people how to do it correctly. And also the FDA, I have prodded, but unfortunately, DJ Eric resigned for personal reasons, no. But I've prodded him to make sure that the the CPR of the currently available antigen test kits will be revised to include the home home testing using antigen test kits. No? Because now it's still done mostly officially in a lab setup.
An infectious diseases expert welcomes the recommendation, as this would help contact tracing and treatment of patients. In the meantime, Duque says mass testing is still not feasible because, he says, it is costly. Now, more frontline government employees are testing positive for COVID-19. At the Metro Manila Development Authority alone, new infections jumped to 70. General Manager Romando Artes said 60 out of 100 people tested on Tuesday turned out positive. Artes added that majority manifested symptoms.
Rest assured that lahat po yan ay currently in isolation, and we are doing extensive contact tracing to isolate all employees na exposed.
The MMDA has doubled quarantine facilities. Chairman Benher Abelos said 95 facilities now have an occupancy rate of 35%. He's suggesting the option for home quarantine again, as he expects their facilities to be on full capacity soon. Now, the annual procession for the Feast of the Black Nazarene, also known as Traslacion, will not make its way down the streets of the city of Manila this year. And as Stanley Gaheta tells us, this is part of efforts to curb the rise in COVID-19 cases.
Wala muna tayong translasyon ngayong taon na ito. At wala rin tayong physical mass.
For the second straight year, there will be no traditional translation to commemorate the Feast of the Black Nazarene on January 9th. The decision was made following a consultation last month between the officials of the Manila City Government and Quiapo Church in the wake of surging COVID-19 cases.
Nalulungkot ako na hindi natin magagawa yung dati nating ginagawa. Nararamdaman ko po ang damdamin ninyo.
There will also be no physical mass inside the basilica, nor virtual showing at digital LED board. Only online masses will be available on the Facebook page of Quiapo Church to avoid crowding.
Mabigat po sa kalooban ko na hindi tayo magmisa ng pisikal. Ito'y para rin naman sa kaligtasan ninyo at ng inyong mga anak o pamilya.
We did our best, and gusto namin yung safety po ninyo ang maging top priority natin.
Many of those who participate believe that the Black Nazarene will heed their prayers and keep them and their families safe from any danger.
Lahat ng request ko since na nag-start ako sa kanyang humiling, binigay niya naman. Lahat ng hiling, makaalis ako, mga pamilya.
Naliligtas kami sa mga sakuna dito kasi napapalibutan kami dati ng may mga sunog. Kumbaga parang umiiwas yung apoy sa amin.
That's why many are disappointed when they learned that there will be no translation again this year.
Minsan na sa isang taon, magdiwang ang kapestahan ng Itim Nazareno, hindi pa namin makakapiling kahit sa isang misa lang, kahit pagdungaw sa harapan ng mahal na basilika ng Itim Nazareno.
The last translation was held on January 9, 2020, 2 months before the nationwide lockdown.
Tuloy po ang online masses, tuloy ang celebration sa kada simbahan, kada probinsya.
Devotees are encouraged to invoke the Black Nazarene to put an end to this raging global health crisis. Stanley Gahete, CNN Philippines.
Next on Newsnight, policemen will be deployed to quarantine facilities in Metro Manila to prevent people from breaching COVID-19 protocols. Details when we return. Stay tuned.
conquering the universe was the ultimate. But there's more. Dahil tinawag ho ako ng Panginoon for a major purpose. To guide the youth, help communities, and to bring others closer to Him. Kaya I take care of my health through proper diet, exercise, and MX3 capsule. I am ready to serve. Kasi para sa Panginoon, hindi lang ako fourth runner-up. First place ako sa puso niya.
Mahalagang paalala, ang MX3 capsule ay hindi gamot at hindi dapat gamiting panggamot sa anumang uri ng sakit.
Sa umagat sa gabi, sa bawat minutong lumilipas, hinahanap-hanap kita, hanap-hanapin ka, sabik sa'yo.
Welcome back to Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. The Tourism Department suspends the accreditation of Berjaya Makati Hotel after it failed to stop a returning Filipino from skipping quarantine. The agency also revoked Berjaya's permit as a multiple-use hotel and slapped a fine said to be twice the rack rate of the hotel's most expensive room. The DOT says Berjaya admitted that its staff did not try to stop the quarantine violator, identified by officials as Gwyneth and Chua, from leaving the hotel. It also did not inform authorities about the quarantine breach. Berjaya has 15 days to appeal the decision. Hotel personnel, as well as Chua and her parents, also face charges from the PNP Criminal Investigation and Detection Group. Chua skipped quarantine on December 22nd and partied in popular commercial center Poblacion that same night, only to test positive for COVID-19. She infected 7 close contacts. 2 policemen per quarantine facility in Metro Manila. That is the latest order of President Rodrigo Duterte after reports of several returning Filipinos skipping quarantine in hotels. Interior Secretary Eduardo Año says the directive takes effect today. He adds police are conducting random inspections of quarantine facilities.
Hindi naman ito kasi permanent. While we are experiencing the surge at nasa level 3 tayo, I think later on, may instill na rin natin yung instinct sa ating mga hotels na talagang bantayan yung mga ROF na naka-quarantine sa kanila. But sa ngayon, we cannot really afford na may mga makakatakas at mag-i-skip ng kanilang quarantine.
Acting presidential spokesperson Carlo Nograles says the police have enough personnel to deploy in quarantine hotels. Nograles also issuing a clarification on Mr. Duterte's earlier statement that hotels cannot be made liable for the enforcement of quarantine rules.
We cannot transfer the power now of even stopping if they would want to, if they would insist to go out. Only government can enforce it, and we have not even to the extent of delegating them the powers to stop them physically. So that would be a messy thing to do.
The President ordered DILG Secretary Ed Año to ensure that may police personnel tayo to strictly enforce doon sa mga quarantine facilities and isolation facilities natin because of the limits of the employees ng hotel to physically enforce. It does not remove or absolve them of their negligence, the omissions of their act, the non-reporting. The cases will be filed. The cases will be prosecuted, and then it will be up to the judge to decide.
The Justice Department also points out quarantine facilities can be held accountable under the law on mandatory reporting of notifiable diseases. Funding for the Batangas government is up 30% this year, with the landmark Mandanas ruling finally taking effect. How do local governments plan to approach the budget increase? Our Lois Calderon gives us the details in this special report.
Meeting his health council was Batangas Governor Dodo Mandana's first order of business for 2022. Their agenda: Spending the 5.4 billion peso budget for this year, a huge chunk he allocated for free health care for Batangueños and building more hospitals as the Omicron variant dampens hope for an early end to the pandemic. That budget is 30% higher than last year's allocation, thanks to the Mandanas ruling that commands the national government to give provinces down to the barangays a bigger slice of national taxes.
That is really the first concern that we have right now. Really health. Kasi masyadong malayo talaga ang national government. Pagbibigay ng gamot, pagbibigay even ayuda, which is really very bad, napakahirap.
The landmark Mandanas ruling took effect January 1st, or 3 years after the Supreme Court told the Duterte administration to give local government units what's due them. Since 1992, when a law granted fiscal autonomy to provinces outside economic center Metro Manila, local governments had been getting just 40% of the taxes collected only by the Bureau of Internal Revenue, or BIR. But the High Court ruled that 40% must come not just from the BIR, but from all national taxes, including customs duties, tariffs, taxes from exploiting national wealth like minerals, and a whole lot more. LGU's tax share consequently now has a new name, National Tax Allotment, instead of Internal Revenue Allotment, or IRA. How much is that this year? Almost 1 trillion pesos of this year's 5 trillion peso national budget.
Nilist po natin yan sa Bureau of the Treasury, and that should be credited to all accounts of the local government units.
The budget boost is seen to bring progress beyond Metro Manila, but the World Bank had flagged that local governments might struggle spending the money. Decentralization meant they need the know-how to handle functions passed on to them by the central government. All eyes could be on Batangas as to whether or not the Mandanas ruling will be carried out properly. The province's chief executive was one of 2 petitioners who challenged before the Supreme Court how much share local governments can get from national taxes and how a higher revenue allotment will lead to the delivery of more services to the people. Mandana says he and his team are ready.
Alam namin kung sino ang nagugutom. Alam namin kung sino ang walang trabaho. That's why tourism is devolved. For example, alam namin kung anong kailangan dito. I feel that there is an extra load on my shoulder right now.
And since 2022 is an election year, concerns have been raised on the likelihood of using funds elsewhere. That's what citizens should be watching out for. Lois Calderon, CNN, Philippines.
Consumer prices slowed in December, the lowest in a year, as food and transport prices eased. Government data show inflation settled at 3.6%. For the whole of 2021, inflation averaged 4.5%, breaching the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas' target of 2 to 4%. Expect weak water pressure in taps in the coming days. That's what Maynilad is advising its customers for now. The water concessionaire attributes the weak pressure to the low water level in Angat Dam in Bulacan. The current level of 202 meters is 10 meters less than the normal.
Sana po ay maintindihan po ng mga customers yon. Yun po ay our way din ng unti-unting paghahanda o sakali man po na dumating dun sa actual na pagbabawas ng alokasyon dito sa Metro Manila. Ang overall request namin sa aming mga customers ay maging responsable lang po dun sa paggamit ng tubig na lumalabas doon sa kanya-kanyang gripo para po magkaroon po tayo ng contribution doon sa pagpe-preserve ng water natin mula sa source natin sa Angat Dam at maitawid po natin yung summer months ng 2022.
Maynilad assures its customers there will be no supply interruption at least until January 15. The company adds it's working to avoid a repeat of the water crisis of 2019. Back then, Metro Manila and surrounding provinces suffered extended periods of service interruption when water at Angat Dam dipped to below the critical level. A look now at what some 2022 presidential aspirants are up to. Senator Ping Lacson wants the supposed connections to the so-called Poblacion girl to be held liable for a quarantine breach. The violator, identified as Gwyneth Ann Chua, had bragged about being able to get away with quarantine because of these connections. Vice President Leni Robredo brings back her office's free antigen testing, the so-called swab cab, in response to the surge in COVID-19 cases. Volunteers of the Marcos Duterte tandem are now distributing construction materials to repair damaged homes in areas affected by Typhoon Odette. And Senator Manny Pacquiao vows to require all government officials to sign a bank secrecy waiver in a bid to fight corruption. The Commission on Elections is unlikely to reopen the filing of certificates of candidacy for the 2022 polls. In an interview with COMELEC spokesperson James Jimenez on Politics as Usual, he said the request of the Cusi-led faction of the PDP Laban would bring election preparations back to square one. Jimenez also notes it would be impossible to postpone the polls this May.
Medyo unlikely na mapagbigyan yan, ano? Kasi masyadong maraming konsekwensya yung pagpapa-reopen ng ating filing ng COC. Remember, just apart from the fact na ang haba-haba na ng binigay na period for filing COCs, kung uulitin mo yan ngayon, hindi naman isang partido lang ang magte-take advantage niyan eh. Ang daming epekto niyan, no? Down the road. Sabi nga nung mismong petition, humihingi din sila ng postponement ng filing ng balota. And that would probably be a logical conclusion of that. So makikita mo kung gaano karami ang gagalaw na mga activities ng COMELEC dahil dyan.
Meanwhile, Senator Amy Marcos says her brother, presidential aspirant Bongbong Marcos, gets favorable results in pre-election or pre-campaign surveys because many Filipinos believe their father, former President Ferdinand Marcos, did good things for the country.
I truly believe that history judges you over the long haul. And the long haul has been almost 40 years. Biglang siguro na re-realize rin natin at napapakinabangan pa rin natin lahat ang mga iba't ibang project ng tatay ko.
Catch the replay of Politics as Usual this Sunday, January 9th at 7:30 in the evening, only here on CNN Philippines. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, Olympic pole vaulter E.J. Obiena wants to keep representing the country. The Sports Commission's recent demand makes this even more of a possibility. And the Harry Potter reunion special got a celebrity switch because of an editing error. Keep it here on CNN Philippines.
When times are busier than ever, balancing work and life becomes a bigger challenge. So it's no wonder more and more people are turning to exercises that just don't give them physical benefits, but create mental serenity too. So get flowing with me today and get that balance back in your life as I guide you through this invigorating Vinyasa flow. This pose is to relieve any lower back pain you might have. It's reminding you to stay home and stay fit.
Welcome back to Newsnight. Olympic pole vaulter E.J. Obiena says he will keep wearing the nation's colors. This despite the Athletics Track and Field Association's recommendation to expel him from the Philippine team. Patafa also recommended the filing of an estafa complaint against Obiena over funds allotted for coaching fees. The star athlete tells CNN Philippines Patafa's move came as a surprise, but says he's thankful for the Philippine Olympic Committee's support during this time.
You know, I think the biggest support I got from POC is basically saying that they will fight for me and make sure that I'm in the competition representing my country, Philippines. It's a privilege to wear this vest. It's a privilege to represent the country.
Earlier today, the Philippine Sports Commission demanded PATAFA reconsider its decision on Obiena's national athlete status and to give the Olympian a chance to appeal. It also ordered Obiena to finish his liquidation to continue getting support from the PSC. Producers of the Harry Potter reunion casting reparo on the special less than a week after its release. That's because the much-anticipated reunion mistakenly used a photograph of actress Emma Roberts instead of Potter star Emma Watson during one of its segments. Fans on social media pointed out the error online. In a statement, producers admitted the editing mistake. A new version with a correct photograph of young Emma Watson is already up online. There is another error in the special that went viral, and this one was pointed out by one of the actors in the Potter series. Oliver Phelps, who plays one of the Weasley twins, posted this screenshot, which shows he was mistakenly labeled as his identical twin brother and vice versa. Oliver is supposed to be the one on the left with the shorter hair, while James is the one on the right with longer hair. Oliver did take the error in stride, saying, quote, "I guess after all those pranks over the years, somebody decided to get their revenge." The show will go on for this year's Golden Globe Awards, but not the way you'd expect. CNN's David Daniel has that story and more on the Hollywood Minute.
The Golden Globes return to the Beverly Hilton Hotel on Sunday, but the event will not be televised, and there'll be no red carpet, no audience, and no nominees or other stars. Only Hollywood Press Association members and some of their grant recipients. Variety reports the Globes reached out to several Hollywood agencies to see if their clients would take part, but no celebrities agreed to do so. The HFPA was rocked by scandal last year, including allegations of corruption and the revelation the group had no black members.
The truth is that I drink a lot, and sometimes I mix it with pills. And I'm here because I woke up this morning convinced I'd witnessed a murder.
Here's your first look at Kristen Bell in a spoof of such thrillers as The Woman in the Window and The Girl on the Train, a Netflix series titled The Woman in the House Across the Street from the Girl in the Window. Bell is also an executive producer on the parody mystery series, which debuts January 28th. Or does it? In Hollywood, I'm David Daniel.
And that is it for now. Join me again on News.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Hontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
This program is brought to you by
This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental
Feeling low on energy? Before you grab that second cup of coffee or that chocolate bar for a quick pick-me-up, you might want to think twice about how much sugar you're consuming. If we're not careful, our sugar intake may become... Feeling low on energy? Before you grab that second cup of coffee or that chocolate bar for a quick pick-me-up, you might want to think twice about how much sugar you're consuming. If we're not careful, our sugar intake may become less than healthy, leaving us at risk of diabetes, heart disease, and more. But not all sugar is bad. And when consumed moderately, it's actually a good source of energy for your body. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. We all get sugar cravings. It can be addictive, but when consumed excessively, it can have adverse effects on our health. Our guests are here today to tell us more. With us is Dr. Maria Feliz Gomez Tuazon. She's an endocrinologist from the University of Santo Tomas Hospital and Capital Medical Center. Also with us is Joe Sebastian, who's a registered nutritionist, dietitian, and coach in the Rebel Fitness app. We hear a lot of information and misinformation about how sugar can impact our health. Some even say that eliminating it from our diets will improve our overall well-being. However, it's a vital source of energy for our body. Of course, though, not all sugar is created equal. I'll start the conversation with Coach Joe. Of energy good sugars for us, and if so, which ones could they be? Kaya, could you give some examples for our viewers?
When we say sugar, it's not just your table sugar. It's also all sugars that you get from carbohydrates. Carbohydrates break down into glucose, fructose, galactose, which is scientifically terms called sugar, diba? And that's your main energy source. So sugars are essential for your body, especially for the preferred source of energy. So carbohydrates, high fiber carbs especially, will be very helpful for you when it comes to your energy levels.
Now, what are some examples, kaya Coach Joe, ng mga sugars that aside from that na nilalagay sa asukal, what other forms of sugar are there that could be beneficial for one's body?
Well, of course, we go to our complex carbohydrates. So you have your potatoes, you have rice, higher fiber rice as well, rolled oats, you have some whole wheat bread, you also have sweet potatoes, corn. These are your carbohydrate sources that turn into sugar. Not necessarily a bad thing. Then you also have your added sugars. So that's your white sugar, brown sugar, cane sugar, agave, honey, all of those things. The difference or how we look into it of what is good and bad is more on the amount that we consume on a regular basis and not necessarily the specific type. Although we do want to maximize or use more of our high fiber carbohydrates when we can.
Fructose and lactose are sugars that we don't have to worry too much about because these foods have nutrients that our body needs. On the other hand, there are sugars that we should try to avoid, like the sugar found in candy, soda, as well as cake. Dr. Feliz, tell us more about this and what are some of the common sources of it? Bakit hindi pa rin masyado clear kaya with majority of people what sugar is what and what is healthy for the body?
Sugar is a form of carbohydrate and contains carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen molecules. So when carbohydrates are consumed, they are digested and broken down into glucose. These serve as the prepared energy for cells throughout the human body, including your brain and central nervous system. So complex carbohydrates are formed from 3 or more sugar molecules, whereas simple carbohydrates are composed of either one sugar molecule, either monosaccharide or 2 disaccharides. So the 4 most common forms of simple sugars include your glucose, fructose, aka the fruit sugar, sucrose, aka your table sugar, and lactose, aka your dairy sugar.
But many replace these highly processed sugars that was mentioned earlier with natural sweeteners, like using honey instead of yung white sugar or yung table sugar. Coach Joe, is this actually better for our health using natural sugars? Is there a big benefit from substituting one table sugar for this?
Actually, when you have honey and table sugar, there isn't much of a difference in terms of their impact into your blood sugar levels. It does depend on the amount. While honey might have antioxidants and other things to offer, you have to eat a lot of honey for you to get those benefits. So at the end of the day, sugar is sugar, whether that's table sugar or honey. It's the amount that we consume that we have to give more of a view or a look into rather than the specific type when it comes to these types of sugars.
And while we can do without added sugar altogether, consuming it in small amounts is relatively fine. But the thing is, many of us have too much of it. But first, we mentioned that sugar is a vital source of energy. Dr. Feliz, pag-usapan natin ito, ano ba yung role talaga ng sugar natin sa body?
So sugar, which is the form of carbohydrate, when broken down to glucose, serve as the preferred energy source for all the cells throughout the human body, including your brain and central nervous system. So glucose travels to the cells of the body where it is converted to your energy used out to carry out various functions such as muscle contraction, and temperature regulation. While some organs can use protein and fat for energy, remember that your red blood cells and the brain exclusively use glucose for energy. So a certain amount of carbohydrate intake is necessary for normal brain and bodily function.
Dr. Feliz, yung mga gustong mag-give up ng sugar altogether, they try to avoid this. Is this actually possible? Can a person survive na zero sugar, absolutely zero sugar sa katawan?
Actually, most of the diet are already with mixed diet, meaning there's a little sugar, there's a little protein, there's a little fat. So it is impossible to really make your diet completely zero sugar. There is at least little percentage. Like we also recommend for patients who are diabetics and those with other heart problems to have sugar in moderation only. Okay? Because everything you take in moderation is healthy. But if you take it in excess, it will be detrimental for your body.
Now, we've heard time and time again that we should be consuming less sugar. And that's because too much added sugar affects the brain, your mood, and many more.
Yes.
And we'll talk more about this after a short break. So stay with us on MedTalk Health Talk. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines, where caring is our calling. From desserts to savory food, cutting down your sugar intake can be difficult. And understanding how it can negatively impact our health can make a huge difference. Dr. Feliz, let's discuss some of the disadvantages of too much sugar.
So eating too many foods with added sugar sets the stage for potential health problems such as, first, poor nutrition. If you choose sugar-laden foods instead of more nutritious foods, you miss out on important nutrients such as vitamins and minerals. Second is weight gain. There is no single cause for being overweight or obese, but added sugar might contribute to the problem. It's easy to get extra calories when eating food that are sugar sweetened. So obesity is also a risk factor for developing diabetes mellitus. And third, it also increases your triglycerides. Triglycerides are a type of fat in the bloodstream and fat tissue. So eating an excessive amount of added sugar can increase triglyceride levels, which may increase your risk for heart disease. And lastly, of course, if there's sweets, there's also tooth decay. So sugar promotes tooth decay by allowing bacteria to multiply and grow. The more often you eat or drink foods with natural sugar or added sugar, the more likely you are to get cavities.
Now, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the term sugar high. When you're feeling tired or not in the mood, our impulse is actually to reach for candy or even chocolate. But this can actually affect our mood in the long run. Coach Joe, could you tell us more about this? How does sugar affect yung mood ng tao?
Sugar usually affects our mood when it replaces our usual meals. If it replaces your more balanced meal, replaces your vegetables, replaces your fruits, that's when it can usually have an impact sa ating mood, diba? Especially because you have that boost of that carbohydrates, and then it slowly brings us down. So what we want to have is a more steady supply of energy throughout the day. And usually that can come from more balanced meals. So not necessarily to remove the sugar, but to make sure it doesn't replace other nutrients we have. So we have a more steady energy throughout the whole day. And that can overall improve your mood.
Now, Coach Joe, pag-usapan natin about the link between sugar and that of joint pain. So a lot of our viewers, could it be that they're feeling some joint pain, some arthritic pain? Is this possibly related to sugar as well? Could you explain that part?
There could be a possibility to relate those two. However, we do see that most of the time, what we really notice from a lot of high consumption of sugar is really what it replaces in your diet. And one of the things we see is we tend to really move towards higher sugar foods and we forget about the other nutrients. So with the lack of nutrients that we get from other food items, nagkakaroon ng deficiencies. And with those deficiencies, nagkakaroon talaga tayo ng mga complications, which can be anywhere from joint pain to mood fog, fatigue, and all of these other aspects. So what we have to look into is making sure that our sugary foods does not replace the other nutrients that our body really, really needs for us to be able to make sure that we're having all of our functions moving and doing the things they need to do.
Dr. Feliz, how does sugar or excess sugar for that matter, may link din ito sa condition ng ating heart? What is the connection with this, Dr. Feliz?
Added sugar or excess dietary carbohydrates may increase your glucose levels and may lead, of course, to obesity. And obesity will be a risk factor to develop diabetes. And of course, if a patient becomes diabetic, it increases the risk for heart attack, for 2 times increased heart attack. So there's always a correlation between heart disease and diabetes. I would like to add regarding eating more vegetables and lean meat is also good for the body because it has low glycemic index, and food or sugars with low glycemic index are really healthy for the body because it gives us lower rise in the blood sugar level of the body, which is beneficial for your body needs.
Kapag isang tao ay na-diagnose with diabetes, especially diabetes type 2, is it possible to revert back to a normal state, or once na-diagnose sila, ito na yung a lifelong condition nila?
Diabetes, yung tinatawag nga nila, yan ang pinaka-loyal na sakit. Hindi ka niya iiwan. So usually, once na-diagnose na diabetes, you're diabetes for life. However, you can manage it and do special precautions to maintain a normal target blood sugar. So meaning, you have to do regular exercise, lifestyle modification, and proper diet. So that's it. And always remember, usually diabetes is also a genetic disorder. If one of your parents has diabetes, there's 40% chance of you having a diabetes. And if both parents are diabetics, you have 60% chance of developing diabetes. However, if you have good lifestyle, proper diet, you can prevent it.
Experts say that eating sugar stimulates pathways in the brain that are associated with feelings of pleasure and reward. And these effects are similar to that of substance use. More on this when we return. Your health is our mission here on MedTalk Health Talk. We'll be right back. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk, your partner in healthcare. When we consume added sugar, different parts of our body take notice, from our joints to our heart and even our brain. Now, sugar stimulates pathways in the brain that are associated with feelings of pleasure, and it's not unlike how our body processes addictive substances. Dr. Feliz, if sugar is very addicting, is this one of the reasons kung bakit para sa mga ibang tao napakahirap bitawan ang pag-consume ng mga added sugars?
Actually, there are several studies recently, still ongoing investigation wherein sugar is recorded to be likely to be a substance abuse disorder, but currently it is not yet proven. However, they say that it is addictive because when you take in sugar, or you mean when they break down to glucose, glucose goes towards your brain and affect the dopaminergic system. And there is a reward pleasure pathway in the brain. And when there is increase in sugar in the body, the sugar makes the person happy because of the reward dopamine pathway. So that's make addictive.
Now, we need to make a conscious effort in our day-to-day, of course, to cut down on added sugar. Coach Joe, could you share with us some tips, especially in how to cut down on added sugar in our day-to-day?
Okay, one thing that we do want to tap into, because there's also a mental health aspect to sugar. One of those aspects is that in disordered eating, a lot of the times, clients will have a struggle removing sugar because they have an all or nothing mentality. It's either I always eat sugar or I don't eat sugar at all. A lot of people have a tendency to binge on sugar because they feel like it's never going to be able to be eaten again. And so we have to remember, you're allowed to have these foods every single day. How much do you actually want or need to feel satisfied in that moment? And so what we can do is start pairing our sugary foods with more high fiber and more high protein foods to help balance out the release in insulin and help your reaction to it not feel like it's the end of the world, last time you're gonna be able to eat it. So that's some of the tips I would do is 1, don't restrict yourself completely. 2, add more fiber and add more protein. And also 3, don't give yourself the mentality that sugar is necessarily bad. It's still important. It's still something that is part of your taste buds and part of your relationships and family. So remember to just enjoy it, but try not to overdo it because you can always have it again next time.
Now, Dr. Feliz, when trying to minimize added sugar sa diet ng isang tao, it can be tricky, especially when you go to when people go to the grocery stores or sa palengke nila to buy certain things. A lot of items actually contain sugars. Are these artificial sweeteners actually healthier than regular sugar, yung mga sugar-free and things like that?
So artificial sweeteners are sweeteners, well, we call them empty calories. So actually, kaya most commonly they are used sa mga beverages. So for people who have increased risk for diabetes, like those who are already on pre-diabetic range of blood sugar, and of course to our diabetic patient that can't really control themselves from eating sugar foods, as what Coach Joe have mentioned, we do not tell them to gradually stop sugar. We do it in moderation, as long as we do it slowly so that hindi sila mag-relapse back to eating bunch of sugar. So we recommend them to use artificial sweeteners instead of yung mga table sugar natin na refined white sugar, brown sugar, because they have higher glycemic load that will be detrimental for the body.
Now, while that touch of sweetness might be tempting, making these small changes in your diet can improve your overall well-being. And with that, I'd like to thank endocrinologist Dr. Maria Feliz Gomez Tuazon and Coach Joe Sebastian for sharing with us your insights, and our viewers will definitely learn a lot, especially when it comes to sugar. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and thank you for watching MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. We'll see you again next time.
Isa po sa mga natulungan ng Kidney Care. Ma'am, pangalan po natin at taga saan po tayo?
Ako si Winnie Di Mayuga. Ako ay 58 years old. Ako talaga ay napakahilig sa maalat. Lahat ng kinakain ko, gusto ko talaga maalat. Ay ako'y nakaramdam ng kakaibang pakiramdam, kaya ako'y nagpa-check up sa doktor. Ay nagpa-request sa laboratory ng creatinine ko, pa-check upan ko daw. Ay naku po, pagkataas, above normal Ngayon, ako muna yung nag-pray kay Lord. Ay itong si Lord, napakabuti. Nagpadala siya ng tao sa akin na nag-aalok nitong Kidney Care. Ay agad-agad ay aking sinubukan ito. Ngayon, nung isang buwan, ay napakagaling ng Kidney Care na ay normal na ang aking creatinine Salamat din sa Kidney Care.
Ang Kidney Care ay mabibili sa Mercury Drugstore at mga suking butika.
Ako po si Dexter Sabilalak, kang Barangay Borabod, Libon Albay. Nagpapasalamat sa Ako Bicol Party List. Pulita natabangan akong magka-training sa saindang programa under TESDA in situ Heavy Equipment Operation. Salamat po Congressman Saldico and Congressman Pido Galvin. Diyos mabalus, Ako Bicol Party List.
Ako Bicol Party List. Katabang na, kasurug pa.
Loren Legarda po. 18 years akong senador at nagsulong ng mga batas na nakakatulong sa mga nangangailangan. Free college education law.
Para sa aming edukasyon.
MSME law.
Batas para sa aming kabuhayan.
Climate Change Act.
Mga batas para sa kalikasan at climate change.
Mga batas na ginawa ko na napapakinabangan ngayon. Sana makatulong pa ako sa mas marami.
Loren Legarda.
This is a paid advertisement.
Nanlalabo na ba ang inyong mga paningin? O kailangan mo ng proteksyon laban sa radiation? Ano pa ang hindi hintay nyo? Pumunta na sa The Vintage Optical. Ang optical para sa lahat. Visit us at the ground floor, Gaisano Capital, Barangay San Roque, Iriga City. We offer free computerized eye examination. Free frame. Lente lang ang babayaran. Starts at 999 complete eyeglasses with anti-radiation lens. The Vintage Optical, the widest selection of optical signature frames and sunglasses. The Vintage Optical, ang optical para sa lahat.
Ringo Honasan po. Sa pagbangon ng mga Pilipino, saludo ako sa mga taong patuloy na humaharap sa hamon ng pagbabago.
Bilang isang ina, handa akong gawin ang lahat para sa kaligtasan ng aking mga anak.
Pandemya man, tuloy pa rin ang serbisyo para malinis ang kapaligiran. Serbisyong publiko para sa kaligtasan ng lahat.
Sa panahon ng krisis, ikaw, ako, magtulungan tayo. Ringo Honasan po. Saludo ako sa Pilipino.
Libre kong San Miguel beer, basta akin ng Tansan. Tansan? Sa San Miguel Oktoberfest Instant GCash Panalo Promo, uulan ng up to 100 million pesos in GCash prizes. Buy any San Miguel beer, hanapin ang code sa crown. Kung meron, panalo ka! Iscan ang QR code sa mga posters at Facebook. I-type ang code and win! Sali na! Available in areas where allowed. See posters for full details. Promo runs from September 1 to December 31, 2021. Per DOH FDA CFR permit number 0424 series of 2021. Drink responsibly.
CNN Philippines Hour sa RPN-DZKI-IRIGA alas 6 hasta alas 7 ng manggi, Lunes hanggang Biyernes. CNN Philippines Hour.